All right. Indian colleges are weird. And I'm not talking about the IITs in this video. This video will cover the rest 99% of the colleges. Even though there are some inconsistencies in an IIT, no one can question their outcomes. This was the result from the placement season this year, and that tells you there's something that they're doing right. That something could be the alumni chain, the community, the fact that these people are really smart, or the fact that most companies want to filter out people, so an IIT is the best place they can go to today in India. The question is, how can you build a similar college, maybe a better college? What exactly is happening in there other than the community that can be replicated by a tier 3 college, by a tier 2 college? And a lot of these efforts are student driven. So if you are a student currently in one of these tier 2, tier 3 colleges and you're not finding the community, you're feeling like you're not going to reach similar outcomes to an IIT, this video will cover a few things that you can do to maybe try to inch towards an outcome similar to an IIT. Let's kick things off with understanding what's currently wrong with most colleges. This is a known truth. You're not going to learn something new here. Most colleges don't have the best professors. The reason for that is the professors have not themselves worked in the industry, are not very closely aligned with the industry, don't even know what to teach. Even if they put in the right efforts, they'll still not be able to teach what's required currently in the industry. It's getting better. These days I've seen professors just give out Udemy courses ke jaake ye padh lo. कुछ ना कुछ तुम्हें समझ आ जाएगा. This is important. That's great. I think if a professor can't teach, the least they can do is guide the student in the right direction. So that's one. The professors, the motivations of a professor not being aligned with the motivation of the student. Number two is the curriculum. I think a lot of these things are out of control for a professor as well. The curriculum is very well defined by the government. If you want to do a CS in BTech, you are supposed to go through a few topics. The government is smart enough to decide what is needed for a holistic development of a student, but that leads to you not having enough time maybe for the right things, even though it's fairly easy to manage mechanical class or an EVS class once a semester, if that helps in holistic development. I think even the CS subjects that you're learning are slightly outdated. You do need operating systems, computer architecture. The lower you go, the better in a college, honestly. So I'm not directly blaming the curriculum, but I think lack of implementation of the curriculum is what leads to the student being highly disconnected from what they need to do once they join the industry. They understand how a computer works, a machine works, what is a CPU, GPU, but a lot of times they don't have to go into a CPU and fix it. So the knowledge that they're getting in these 4 years may not directly apply to the industry. That doesn't mean it's bad knowledge. It's just that they're not getting enough time, resources, energy to focus on the things that will get them a job. This video is about getting a job or outcomes when we're comparing this specific outcome, the placement outcome. Of course, CS is great, research is great, and there are colleges where the professors are teaching the right things. If you want to go into research, this video is not about that. This video is about 90% of the people who want to get into the industry as soon as possible. The problem is colleges are not very close to the industry. The stakeholders over there, the professors are not very close to the industry. That leads to, the person you're looking up to or the person that you should be looking up to, the professor, not being able to guide you in the right direction. So the first thing a better college needs to do is get professors that are very close to the industry. That means either they're currently working or they've very recently stopped working, doing their own thing, becoming a manager, but they need to know what's happening right now. If you want to join a Google, the best thing you can do is have an elder sibling who's currently working at Google guide you, rather than someone who chose academia, let's say, and has been teaching the same things for the last 10 years. So that's one. Part two is the community. IITs have very strong network effects. Everyone around you is really smart. It's really hard to get a 9, 10 CGPA. It's really hard to be the top of the batch. That's not true for other colleges. The problem there is, if you are good, you're probably the smartest person in the room, and that's usually the wrong room. You have no one to learn from, and these are your formative years. During your 4 years, if you don't see a lot of competition, if you don't see people having extraordinary outcomes, you might not aim to get these. You might not even know a path to get these. That is why if you can some form or fashion get close to an IIT, for example, one of my friends used to just go to the IIT Delhi campus, even though he was from a tier 3 college. He ended up doing really well. He does attribute a little bit of his success to being around those people. So if you can't directly get close to them by being on campus, find ways to get close to these people. It's easy to reach people online these days. The worst case, you'll see a bunch of podcasts on our channels. Just reach out to the person directly and ask them, what did they do right? These are people who've, from not the best college, gotten a job very recently in the last, let's say, 3 months. So they know how to get a job. They've recently done it. So try to get into these circles. Don't feel shy. Worst case, they don't reply. You get close to a community, and this community usually is what leads to the best outcomes, even in IITs. The reason IITs have such strong placement seasons is because, well, number one, there is a brand. Microsoft maybe just wants to go to an IIT. But more than that, the alumni chain is working at a Microsoft or a Google. So they want to come back on campus and, be an interviewer in the college that they graduated from. And that leads to higher and higher compensation packages because they're all competing for the day one slot. And, that's a very small bubble of companies competing for talent and not otherwise. That is not true for a tier 3 college. Their talent is scarce to begin with. But even if there's a decent bunch of talent, companies are not lining up to come. It's fairly simple supply demand. If I want to build a better college today, there needs to be very clear signs that the people in here are really smart. That could be through the number of GSOC selections, the number of people reaching ICPC, world finals. These are, outcome-based metrics. I can bet if today a specific college does 30 GSOC selections, companies will flock there. If not today, in a few years, because these network effects will grow. Because these metrics sort of show what's happening inside the college. The path to reach there is really hard. It's really hard for a current tier 3 college to create the ecosystem of, a lot of GSOC producers. The reason being there's really one that can get there, and usually the ones that do, they don't really want to give back to the college. That is not true for a big college, by the way. I mean, in tier 1 colleges, alumni in their final semester are working really hard to, pass down the knowledge down the chain. At least that was true for IIT Roorkee. As soon as I joined the college, fourth year ke jo best bande the, they would spend a lot of time with a small group of people in a lab or somewhere else and make sure that network is spread out. So one GSOC selection became 5, became 20, became 50. When I joined IIT Roorkee, there were only 12 selections. By the time I graduated, we were number 1 in the GSOC selection list. So these are just very simple community effects. No one's teaching this in school. So, don't feel like, wahan ki class mein kuch ho raha hai. It's just the community. Getting into the community of these people is actually much harder than getting into IITs. IITs ke andar bhi, there are these small communities of extremely strong developers, CS people, which is even more competitive. The college that is able to create that community is the college that will win. And if you are those 3 people right now that are really smart in your college, try to create that community. What has happened right now is a lot of this community has moved online. So everyone's, for example, chasing a specific content creator. Everyone's looking at their content. But what really needs to happen is small groups of people in colleges doing extremely well. The learning that you have in person with all of you is going to be much more compared to, the knowledge that you're passively gaining through an online course or through a YouTube video. So step 0 for any college that really wants to outshine needs to be students and not teachers. Content can be found everywhere. I think harder to execute on content. It's very easy to, passively watch it. But if you're able to execute on content, if whatever you're seeing on the internet right now from smart people, you can actually implement, then the next step is just making sure you can spread that as much as possible in the college. Here's a very good example of this. 𝗟𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗀, not from the best college, but he was one of the first people who got into a placement. And now in Super 30, he brought 5 of his friends over here, who are all from Nepal and, will do well. 5 से शायद 50 हो जाएंगे. So these kind of sort of network effects spread. But if he wanted, he would have been like, नहीं भैया मैं अकेले आ रहा हूँ. But he forced me, नहीं भैया ये 5 लोग हैं, they can't pay right now, इनको रखो आप. And they'll also come. They all moved from Bangalore to Noida. So these are the small efforts that you have to take to make sure that the community grows. What are your thoughts? Why did you bring your friends?
Yeah, the reason I brought them was, first I saw like the people right here, right? How much they know and all. And they really wanted, like, they didn't force me, but they told me like, in a way, like, how do I explain this? Like, someone tells you in a way, they are not forcing you to, but they are feeling like, from their like heart, they are telling you to take me there as well. Right. So yeah, in that way, I thought like they were capable enough. And I told you, like in guarantee, right? If they are there, then they will not be among the bad ones. They will be among the, maybe top 30, something like that. But yeah, I think they are doing fairly well. So yeah, that was my maybe like my contribution. I also referred Satyam, right, to like get into this. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know how to explain this, but
cool. Thank you, Satyam. That covers point 1, the community. Let's move on to the industry. Most people from a college want a job by the end of it. Some of them want FANG jobs. Some of them want highly paid remote jobs. Someone wants to go into an HFT. The question is, how do you get close to the industry? How do you make sure these industry players want to visit your campus? The easiest answer here is look at what this company is working on, what an engineer in this company is working on. If in your 4 years of a degree, you're performing similarly to an engineer in these companies, which honestly is not very hard because Once you reach a company, you don't do much. It's a very small problem statement that you're working on, and you're enjoying your 9 to 5, and you're going back to home, enjoying work-life balance. So if you really look at it, talk to a friend of yours, talk to someone working at FANG, barring a few exceptional cases, most of the time you have a standard 9 to 5, and whatever is being learned over there can also be learned in college. It's not like your brain develops too much after 22. When you're in the 18 to 22 circle, you can actually perform much better and learn much faster compared to when you grow older. So the problem isn't that you can't learn, it's that you don't know what to learn. One of the things that happened at IIT Roorkee, for example, was the startup founders and people who are currently seeing scale used to teach us. I was personally taught by some of the early people at 𝗟𝗶𝗹𝗀𝗀. The co-founders of 𝗟𝗶𝗹𝗀𝗀 were my seniors, and the early engineers were right there on campus when I reached IIT Roorkee. So since they were hitting scale, seeing initial problems, I could learn a lot from them very passively. I saw them write the initial code base of 𝗟𝗟𝗃 when that was happening. These are the things that are heavily missing and very hard to bring them in-house unless you're attracting these talent from Google, Facebook, 𝗟𝗟𝗃 to come and teach. The way to get closer to the industry is to bring people from the industry to teach, or the student has to work themselves and try to get closer to the people currently working there. That leads to a lot of referrals, that leads to a lot of, oh, this guy is really smart. That leads to DSA getting removed from a metric to judge a student. Right now, student is a thing, SD1 is a thing, that won't happen in the future. But right now, companies want to bulk hire, even though that's going down really quick. But we can say that companies want to bulk hire. They don't care if you have skills, they'll do a DSA test and get you in. But eventually, they would want to hire you based on your skills. Can you hit the ground running on day 0? This already happens in remote jobs. No one's giving you a job based on a DSA interview. But this will happen eventually for all jobs. It will be highly skill-based. There'll be a bunch of trials. There'll be hiring and firing. It's the common truth. Accept it or not, but eventually this will happen. Right now, companies are still a little finicky in firing people. Completed employee can stay, but at some point, this may or may not happen. To prepare for that, you need to make sure you're providing value, and that's it. No one's expecting you to kiss your managers to stay in a company. You need to provide value, and you can provide value from day 0 if during your college you're spending time doing the same things. I have done that. In my college, I've spent a lot of, I wouldn't call it industry time. I would still say I was building projects that eventually I was like, college knowledge translated to me getting a job over here. I did try the DSA grind. I did get a campus placement, but did not learn anything there. Did not learn anything at my Amazon intern. I started to learn when I started to do WebRTC, which is something I learned back in college. So, college ki core engineering learning helped me get much better outcomes than the standard path of going through a DSA and then getting a FANG or a finance job. Even though those are great outcomes, I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that the tides are shifting, the times are changing, and this might be a hiring metric right now, but there's a high probability. Talk to a DSA YouTuber, they will tell you, okay, DSA might not be the best hiring metric in the future. If that happens, this thought sort of cripples a lot of people because doing DSA is like doing JEE, and that's something we've been taught over the years. Okay, do this examination, which has nothing to do with your final thing, but PCM पढ़ लो, and if you do well here, you get a CS degree. And similarly, DSA is very similar. Okay, do DSA, and then you'll do a job where you're probably not going to use DSA for a long time. Both of these things will change. It's a question of when and not if. So when that switch happens, if you are a good engineer, you should actually be happy. You don't have to do the irrelevant things. You really have to focus on what provides value to a company in the future. If you can learn that, only then can you do a startup of your own. You need core hard skills to build a website, a product, an app, rather than solving a puzzle every day. So not trying to diss on DSA. It's great. I've done it in college. But I'm just saying, if you're looking at it as a hiring criteria, it is there right now. It is a great thing to do. You should do it. I think colleges that are focusing a lot on ICPC will also fare well. But if you have the choice, think for a second. Do I want real skills? Do I want to expedite my journey of becoming a software developer, starting my own thing? Or am I okay with doing this thing that may or may not be useful in my job, but I'll do it because it will lead to a job? Lastly, are degrees even relevant? Do you even need to go to a college today? Can't you just get a job without going to a college? Are there even going to be CS jobs in the future? Long story short, it is an optimal market. Yes, you don't need 4 years to get into a college. A lot of times people do boot camps and do really well, but the CS curriculum helps. If you are looking at a 40-year horizon for your career, a degree will help you in a few places. Number one, the CS concepts, if you're actually learning them and not sleeping in class, will help somewhere in the future. Number two, degrees are a bare minimum metric to get into any, at least a big tech. Maybe not for a startup, but any big tech would have a BSc, BTech, very basic criteria before you can actually join them. Thirdly, for going for a master's, you need a degree. There's no easy way to show skills without having a degree. And number four, when you're applying for visas, there are bare minimum requirements everywhere. These are things that have touched me. These are places where I've seen my degree has helped me. So I'm unsure if a degree can be replaced anytime soon. Unless there are better metrics to judge people, you will always need some sort of an accreditation from the government, from a university to be able to, pursue bigger paths in the future. So I don't think it can be completely replaced. I think it can be made better. And thankfully, the government is taking efforts in this direction. If you've seen the new education policy, now a lot of the curriculum can be controlled by the industry. You can make it highly relevant and very close to the industry, which is sort of the need of the hour. I think the better college is just going to be a combination of getting people currently working in the industry and owning most of the syllabus while you're doing things that are needed, by the government for whatever reason. It could be you're needed for holistic development, needed for becoming a better human being, which are also important. But more than that, if majority of the curriculum is controlled by people currently working in Google, in an HFT, in a remote job, then it's easy outcomes and probably comparable, if not better outcomes to tier 1 colleges today. So if you are a tier 3 college or tier 2 college, I've given you a roadmap to probably, become better. You don't have to listen to me, who am I? But if I were to start a college myself today, these are the things I would do. I would make sure that everyone who's teaching here currently has a job. The bare minimum metric would be you either work at a FANG, work at a startup, work in a remote job, currently in an HFT. And this is your passive thing. You're only coming here to take lectures and just spread out as much knowledge as possible. It's very easy for a small lot of people, let's say a 300, 500 people batch, to drain a lot of knowledge from a FANG engineer or from an engineer who's currently working in the industry. If you look up to them as a mentor, a role model, someone you want to be, if there is enough incentives for someone from a FANG to join as a professor, as a part-time professor or whatever, then the kind of knowledge transfer that can happen between them and the students is going to lead to some of the students learning what's happening there, and then the community factor kicking in eventually, and a lot of the people, not everyone of course, but most people at least, being a level above what's already happening. This isn't making a college incrementally better. I think this is going to make a college 10x better. It surprises me this hasn't already happened, and no one has solved this, probably because there isn't enough regulation around this. You can't give out a degree while providing a lot of hardcore skills. And it's also very hard to convince engineers who are doing really well to come out and get drained, because as a good engineer, if you're surrounded by a lot of people and solving doubts on a day-to-day basis, it does get a little overwhelming, and you start to question yourself, your future, your career. What am I doing? Why am I explaining such simple things to dumb people? But if there's enough incentives on all sides, I think that would lead to a better college. And ideal college is one where the person who's teaching is the person who's currently working, and the community that is there has high IQ and good relationships amongst each other, making sure everyone's sharing knowledge and growing the whole community together. If you're a college of 200 people, there's no point of competing. There are jobs for 200 people out there. The question is, how well can you work with each other to make sure, the community as a whole does really well. This is one of those places where 1 to 1 equal to 100. When RazorPay started a few years ago, they were very small. Seed stage probably valued at less than 10 mil, but today they're worth close to $10 billion, and everyone there has done well. There was no point of not sharing knowledge. There was no point of not hiring co-workers. There was no point of keeping all the equity with yourself. Everything was shared, and everyone ended up doing really well. So if there is a college out there, if you are currently in your college, if you found that group, try to chase these outcomes. And if there is a better college that I can envision right now, it would be one that would look something like this. With that, we'll end it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.